We don't have to. You're making it too easy for us. So just be demanding. Take the risk of actually saying, I don't need you guys. I can get employees from anywhere else. Unless you give me somebody worth employing, the whole game will change. So please do your part. Please be demanding. Be hard on us. And you'll see how we will respond.
Thanks, Prof. Let me bring back Emily on this. Emily, so what are the main lessons so far, opportunities and challenges for businesses and the work life?
Yes, to begin with, I think this, even if we are starting to maybe glimpse a possible end or start of a coexistence with COVID-19, where we are allowed to roll back some restrictions and start going back and jobs and in this discussion. I think there's definitely some lessons to learn from how COVID-19 has impacted the impact in turn of technology on businesses and in the work life. And from my personal perspective, I think an interesting background perspective to start with in this context is a tendency sometimes for digital transitions to happen faster in countries where an existing, let's say, competing analog structure is not already in place. As such countries, they may have a leg up on other countries where digitalization is rather about changing an existing structure, which in turn may prove more time consuming and resource consuming than as opposed to rolling out a brand new one where you don't have to go through the same transitional phases. And at the same time, in highly industrialized economies, digital infrastructure is often more developed and digital literacy in the population also higher, which together provide an advantage in terms of adaptability level among businesses and workers. So I think that's a very interesting background perspective. And but still, all opportunities aside, when you are experiencing a quantum leap in digitalization like COVID-19 has triggered, it inevitably poses important challenges for businesses in the work life. And they have been described in a very good manner already by many of the other speakers. But speaking from a Norwegian experience, particularly, I've mentioned them before, but I will mention it again. We see four main challenges, which we expect will become key topics in discussions among social partners and at political level. And it's how this transition is impacting labor law and working time rules. It's digital infrastructure and privacy and cybersecurity as main aspects of digital security and digital skills. And I would like to spend my last few minutes to not take up too much time going back to, because I've noticed there was a question on digital infrastructure, etc., and how can you make sure that all of Kenya has access to appropriate internet connection. And I would like to draw on a certain, or I would like to add a perspective that we, from a Norwegian context here, are experiencing, and which I think is relevant also for Kenya and Kenyan businesses. And it is the fact that it's important to remember that households and individuals may have quite different infrastructure or needs than businesses have in terms of internet connectivity and speed of internet networks. And we see here in Norway that we generally score high on connectivity, and we have a lot of resources have been put in by commercial actors to rapidly deploy high-speed networks, etc. And today we have 89% of the households have access to 100 over 10, so 100 upstream and 10 downstream megabytes per second, which is fantastic and of course very important. But if you look at businesses, as opposed to household businesses, they often not only receive as much data, but they also send equally amounts of data as they download, and that's and for that reason, they may be more or better served, or a better benchmark for connectivity among businesses, maybe a 50 over 50 megabyte per second connection. And what we see in Norway today, that while internet connectivity general is high, only 70% of businesses have access to, or the business buildings have access to a 50 over 50 megabyte per second connection. So there are still blind spots to be bridged. And I will close with that. But to make sure that we are resilient enough, it's important to start with the foundation, right? When you build a house, you need the foundation. So the main lesson to learn here, if I can give one key input, is to make sure that you may have different connectivity needs than households when building the foundation.
Thanks. Box, I see there's Jacob Mengich who says, now that COVID-19 is here and has charted new ways or new normal, technology cannot be avoided now and in the future. How then is the government and other stakeholders going to make this attractive and cheaper for all the businesses and organizations? Maybe a review in the legislative framework. ICT is expensive for the firms. We've spoken about that. Let's see Julie. Julia Zenga says, I think for me it is a comment. We must appreciate as a country we have had few instances of digitization of businesses and work environments. There is need to make internet digital devices accessible to all citizens. It could be rich cost implications, simple use of technology for digital devices. I see there's another last one there from Florence Adhiambo down there. Scroll lower. Let's just see what he's saying. Okay, she's just thanking Anand for the clarification. You see there, Mary Chamas. How do we measure KPIs for staff working from home? Are there softwares to enable real-time reporting? Anand, take a shot at that.
Yeah, sure. There is Prohans. Prohans.com is one software. There is a remotedesk.com. And there is a Monitask. So these are the three immediate names that come to my mind which can be used. I think some of them are free if you have less than 100 employees. I think if you have more employees and more real KPIs you want to track, then they also ask you to pay. But I think it's a good start to look at those three softwares. I've typed the names on the Q&A for easy reference.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Yeah. It keeps coming off one side. Okay, so sorry about that. So my issue with the question really is that there are two ways of supervising, or KPIs. There's the assumption where we have to watch over someone and see what they're doing all the time, or else they won't do anything. And there's the other school of thought where I tell you what I need you to get done, and then you better deliver it by a certain time. That's the school of thought I prefer to work towards. And for that, I don't need to watch you. I don't need to see what you're doing. As long as you know that by tomorrow, 8 o'clock, you have to deliver this thing in this format. I don't care what time you do it, whether you want to do it now, then sleep the whole night, or you want to sleep the whole day and then work at night. As long as you know 8 o'clock tomorrow you deliver it, it's almost none of my business when you're going to do it. I just want you to do it, and you have to be responsible. And obviously, if you don't deliver, then there'll be consequences. And you could be out of your job if you do it often enough after warnings. So you'll know how the game is played. And suddenly, without supervision, I'll see you performing. Now, the other school of thought is, I absolutely must be watching you as you're working in order to be convinced you're working. I think that's the old way where you have to come in at 8. I see you coming into the office at 8. I see you leaving at 5, and I keep checking that you're at your desk. Nowadays, I could be on YouTube even though I'm at my desk. I'm still not doing anything. So even if you use the software, I mean, I'm not downgrading anything. Anand said there is software that can have a camera on the employee and it can measure how many times the employee left the desk and what they were doing when they were at the desk. But I'm thinking, no, that's not even human, to treat people like that. So don't worry about whether they're at their desk or not. Don't worry about supervising it. Just give them a measurable target and a deadline, and then make sure there are rewards and consequences if they don't meet the deadline. That's the way I'd play the game.
Thank you so much, Prof. And now let me bring in Mr. David Kisa, the MD, Bixa Limited at Ukunda South Coast, to give us his remarks and also to talk about the issues of intervention and how do we adopt going forward now that COVID-19 is here with us. Mr. David?
All right, we see.
Lost Mr. David Kisa there. He'll be back with us in just a bit. But I'd like to give you a chance to give just closing remarks generally. So where do we go from here now that we are here, Mr. Nand? And I'll start with you. We know the situation as is. We are here now. We're heading into 2021 and then 2022. For
what is your word of advice to employers and also to employees?
I mean, yeah, I'll say there is a joke which is being circulated, in WhatsApp and other places, saying, who actually has fast-tracked your digital transformation? And the multiple choice questions were CIO, CEO, and COVID-19. Right? And majority of the people answered it was COVID-19 which fast-tracked the digital transformation. So, I mean, jokes apart, for good or bad, everybody looking at digital is in the survival mode. And now, after surviving, obviously one has to improve because there are many jobs lost. You need to bring them back into the formal employment sector, which means we need to start improving our business lines. For that, I mean, today, my expertise is technology. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of other interventions one can do. But from a technology standpoint, find out the tools that are applicable can help you to reduce the costs and can improve the performance and can create the employment. And also the existing employees obviously need to also be retrained to make sure that all the changes that are happening in the cybersecurity, on the AI, and on all the technological fronts, while we help our own employees to geared up for the next revolution that is coming in, or the next latest technologies coming in, and also help customers. So that way we improve the business, and that's the only way to increase the employment and to create more livelihoods. So companies who have adapted, continue and intensify. Companies who have not adopted, there is no time left, and technology, in my view, is one of the best fitted tool to improve our businesses. Thank you.
All right, Prof, 1 minute.
Okay, if there's one advice I'd give employers, it's communicate, communicate, communicate. So the more you talk with your employees, the more and you're transparent and you're trying to help them, you'll be surprised how much loyalty you'll get from them. So even if you have to have a salary cut as a temporary measure, if they realize from the accounts you're showing them that, look, there's no other way I can keep this business afloat, and I need to keep it afloat so that you can continue to have your job, and they see that you're genuine and transparent and authentic and sincere, then you will actually get loyalty. They'll work even harder despite earning less. It's crazy, but that's the way it happens. And then if you talk with other stakeholders, your customers, people in industry, people in technology, you will begin to anticipate what's coming next and to start preparing for it. Otherwise, you're constantly reacting to what you've just seen and experienced yourself. You have to now kind of look at the emerging future. I'm taking a course, it's a massive open online course on edX offered by MIT right now, and it's called Leading from the Emerging Future. So instead of always learning from the past, imagine what the emerging future is like, and what would you need to know by that time in order to be ready. So instead of learning lessons from the hard things that happened in the past, learn lessons by looking at the future, which might be frightening or it might be interesting, but either way, you're not ready yet. Then learn your weaknesses by comparing yourself against the emerging future, and then prepare for that emerging future. Two pieces of advice: communicate, transparent and sincere with your employees, you'll win their loyalty. Talk with the other stakeholders to try and imagine what the emerging future is like.
All right.
And prepare for it.
Thank you so much. And now let me bring in Gilda Oderos, the first Vice President FKE, to make closing remarks on this because we've run out of time. Gilda, you have 5
Gilda, you
minutes.
have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It has been such an enriching morning. I've been scribbling away and it's just been wonderful. I'm sure you'll all agree with me that the panelists and our speakers did an excellent, excellent job. One of the things, if we were all together in one room, I would have asked everybody to say the one thing they should be saying all the time and remembering so that we keep on our toes is what Professor Ogutu taught us today. Hayawi, hayawi, hua. That is one big lesson for everyone. And when I listened to the presenters today, hayawi, hayawi, hua kept resonating. Now, why do I say that? Our CS was able to share with us how, as soon as COVID happened, he brought together FKE, that's employers, and COTU, the workers' union, to sit together with him and work and say, what do we do from here? How can we work together? And you heard from the representative of COTU. He was representing the COTU Secretary General, Francis Atwoli. He read his speech. And you heard from him. He said these unions and employers came together to work together and agreed that let's cooperate and work amicably. And the CES did mention the same and stated how the three parties were able to sit together and come up with an MOU, social dialogue. Now, we all know what happens in many occasions when the employers and the union meet. But hayawi, hua, that's what happened there. What we think cannot happen, happened. So thank you, Kotu, for your presentation on that. And I must also highlight something that came up by the Secretary General, Roberto Suarez, for IOE. He shared with us how the pandemic has affected Africa. Coming forward, how it's going to be affecting us and reducing trade, looking at next year, 2021, and how challenging it is going to be. But we also so hope. The good thing is that we are looking at situations here, and then there's hope that also being brought out in these situations. And we have to understand and appreciate the current situation for us to be able to plan out. Now, remember that Professor Ogutu told us here that chance favors the prepared mind. And so how prepared are we? And Roberto Suarez brought to our attention the projections that they see 20 to 30% of workers are going to remain as remote workers going forward. And so that means businesses have been looking at seeing how can we cut down our costs. And that's a comment that was made as well by Mr. Nagosu of Technobrain, that we have to be prepared to reduce performance and cut down costs. And if we're going to do that, then one of the ways is to see that going forward, we will have to have remote workers. That's a fact that's going to be with us. Institutions, learning institutions are also looking at hybrid, as we have heard. And the looking at hybrid is what we need to focus on as employers and as workers, a business community, all the partners that we work with. that as we're going forward in a hybrid way, how is this going to work for everybody? We learned how 1.7 million is something that we've been aware of, maybe some haven't. 1.7 million jobs were lost. The FKE president, Habil Olaka, said very, very clearly to us that 8.3% of jobs were lost just within this period of time. All the formal jobs that were created in Kenya over the last 5 years were wiped out. And so I want to leave you with the hope that we heard today. There was hope that economies will grow. There is hope that fortune favors the bold, that we need to be bold with our decisions that we're making going forward, that we need to collaborate with learning institutions to be able to work out the skills that we need, so that even as we use technology to leverage on what we have, we can make sure that we improve our performance. We were reminded, we must remember not to talk about post-COVID, but co-COVID, because we don't know how long it is going to take. Ladies and gentlemen, I could go on, but I have to stop there. I was given 5 minutes to wrap up. To wrap it up, be prepared for hybrid. Let's dare to be different. Let's know that the future is now and not sitting back and waiting. And I can't wait to hear more tomorrow with the next panelists and the speakers. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Vice President.
FKE Gilda Odera, thank you so much for summarizing that. That's where we've come to the end of the first day of this Employers Annual Conference 2020. Tomorrow, I want to show you what we'll be talking about. That is day 2. This is what we will be talking about: human capital trends and skills of the future. That is the conversation we're having tomorrow on this day in regards to COVID-19. Remember, like Professor said, fortune favors the bold, chance favors the prepared mind. Hayawi, hayawi, hua. Thank you so much for taking part in this hybrid conference. This is the new normal, ladies and gentlemen. We will deal with the technological issues here and there. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.